My name's Kevin, and this is the Bible Artist Podcast. And we will be getting back to discussing some chosen related topics. Last week, we hit on some of the other upcoming Bible shows and Bible movies and different things that are coming up down the pike. But this week, we're going to be looking to kind of what's ahead for the chosen. And in particular, I think we'll start to kind of contemplate some of our ideas about the chosen season 6 and what that might look like. We'll get into more specifics as we move along later this year, because there's still quite a ways until the chosen season 6 comes out. Dallas Jenkins was recently on a live stream, and he was basically saying, we're not going to set a specific date yet, and it will likely be may take a little bit longer than this past season has taken, because The Chosen it's been pumping out seasons at a very rapid pace relative to where most of the entertainment industry is at. For kind of the more kind of prestigious shows, they often take, 2 years or sometimes 3 years. So that they've been able to kind of keep on a 1-year pace basically for the past few years, even though it's, independent produced show, and even given the difficulty and all the sets and things like that, has been pretty impressive. So if it takes them a year and a half or whatever, I think I think most people will probably be understanding. But yeah, and I also imagine it'll help that there's other chosen stuff coming out. There's other Bible shows that are going to be coming out during the season. So I hope that people will be understanding. Yeah, Vic, actually, before we get into our main discussion, do you have any thoughts on kind of the pacing of release?
Well, I mean, I understand how modern TV making is done and how it's a lot slower. I still think that's a problem, just because when you give somebody a year and a half or 2 years in between seasons, you lose all the momentum. You forget what's going on. I don't. Yeah. I think they need to stick with it. They need to stick with it every year pace. They only got to do it 2 more years. I think they can do it. So, yeah.
I think
we're gonna the whole next season's gonna be 1 day. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
How hard can it be to shoot a season that takes place in a day?
I don't know. I could see it being easier in some respects, because you might be able to reuse certain footage, especially depending on the approach to shooting the new season, which we'll be discussing in a little bit, and how they expand this out to be a single day. But I could also see it being tricky, because you have to be thinking very kind of intricately about how different things interweave. You have to be really careful about probably kind of continuity and things like that. And I think probably also just one of the realities is, as the show is getting bigger, kind of the people who are starring in it, it's probably good for them, which means that they are probably getting other opportunities and stuff as well, which probably makes scheduling more difficult. And I imagine there's just a lot of kind of complicating factors that come with success. So, but I do get what you're saying. It would be ideal if they could kind of keep that pace going, especially until they start releasing other chosen adjacent properties. Once if you have 2 years off, but you've got a chosen spinoff show in between, I think that would also feel a little bit different.
I mean, right now they're just about ready to be on Amazon. Now's the time you gotta strike while the iron's hot. They're never gonna have as much momentum as they have right now, I think.
Yeah.
I get it. These things take a lot of work to do, but if any way they can get it stay to that 1-year pace, that would be to the benefit.
Yeah. Do you think they'll do a Christmas special or something like that to try to? Because I feel like last time
that would be one way to do it. If they're going to be late, then they could definitely do that.
Yeah,
give us something.
I think that's what they did. Was it between seasons 2 and 3 or 1 and 2? When they had a little bit of delay with I think. Yeah, I think they had a Christmas special to kind of tide people over a little bit last time that happened, where they were a little longer. Yeah, but
I think they could do a whole bunch of those just give us a whole bunch of little short films, little 10-minute vignettes with each of the disciples. Just give us something, kind of like that one episode 7. Just give us more of that. Just kind of spread those out over, one a month or something, or one a week for a while. I think that would
That would
tide
be
over
interesting.
people.
Yeah. So just so people know, we are not against the concept of some of that content, because we, in one of our previous episodes, we were not big giving glowing reviews to episode 7. Some of that stuff is interesting. Like I'm interested in the idea of it, but I just felt like in the context of episode 7, it got like the pacing I felt like was a little off. But yeah, I agree with you. If we could get some like little shorts, or like have like a little mini series where we're getting like little biographical vignettes about the disciples, that could be a way to kind of keep people connected to the franchise, keep them interested. Yeah, that would be an interesting spin-off idea. Yeah. Okay, so let's get into talking a little bit about Chosen season 6. So there's kind of a couple of buckets that I'd like to talk about. So one would be talking about the structure of season 6. So season 5 is the first season of The Chosen that really has had a pretty unique structure. Like all the ones before that had a pretty straightforward structure. Events followed pretty much chronologically, and then you'd have some interesting things with the introduction, the cold open. Sometimes it would be a flashback, sometimes it would be a flash forward, and then occasionally on the episode 3 of every season, for the first 3 seasons at least, was always like a little bit of a unique episode that was kind of its own thing. But for the most part, like The Chosen has had like a fairly standard chronological structure. But then season 5, as Victor predicted, season 5 did something a little bit different. So if you haven't seen season 5, let me just say, like, spoilers ahead. We're just going to talk about it as if anybody who's watching at this point has seen it, and so just turn it off now if you have not. Yeah, you can come back and watch this later. So season 5, you've got the cold open section, which is the Last Supper, and it's doing kind of a reverse, like going back in time. Each subsequent scene goes back to ends at where the scene before it began, or whatever. So those scenes are going backwards, and then I need to mirror my movements. Those scenes are going backwards, and then the main sequence is going forwards, and then they kind of meet in the middle in episode 8. So that was kind of like an interesting structure that they did. We can nitpick whether there are ways that it could have worked better, or whether it was the best idea, but it seems like the team is kind of wanting to experiment a little bit now that they've kind of got some momentum, and they've got a little bit of space, I think, or like capital to be able to do things that are a little bit unique and different. Maybe they're wanting to explore different ways of structuring their seasons, and so there are kind of a couple ways that you could approach this coming season, assuming that, like, this coming season, they've said multiple times, this is just going to be basically Good Friday. I mean, maybe like the end of, it started picking up where season 5 left off. So right after the betrayal by Judas, up until we don't know. I don't know if I don't think they've said like exactly where it ends, but I imagine somewhere after the burial of Jesus, after they've prepared him and put him in the tomb, and then we're waiting for Jesus and his resurrection. And so it's not a like large amount of time, even though there is like a lot written in the Gospels about this period of time. Even like compared to Holy Week, I imagine there's probably more on Holy Week than there is on this certain like specific sequence of events, or at least like it's comparable. It's not it's not like a ton of material that's taking place during this time. And because it's also so condensed, there's also probably just less room for like a ton of elaboration. And so there are kind of a couple different structures that we could go into. So one that you kind of suggested when we were discussing season 5 is that they could have Jesus while he's on the cross, like having kind of a lot of visions or having like kind of Old Testament flashbacks and things like that are, you know, tying in thematically, providing a little bit of context. You kind of had that idea initially. Do you want to share any more about it, Victor? Or?
Well, one of the reasons why is because just from its very nature, season 6 is going to be unrelentingly bleak. Just what we see presented on the screen. I mean, setting aside how how the story ends, it's just going to be one bad thing after another that happens to Jesus to the point where he dies at the end. So it's like that's what we're going to see presented on screen chronologically. There's no way that they can do a season of TV where it's just that, even if it's that is biblically accurate to what it is. People would shut down from watching that. So I think that's why we're going to see lots of flashbacks. And it's probably why it's going to take longer to do this season than normal, because they're not just going to be in one location doing something. I think they're going to be going to all the other locations we've been to from throughout the show. And we're going to be seeing flashbacks to different important things, either parts that we never did see in the first place. We might get to see the transfiguration. There's going to be a lot of things that, especially I think, are going to need to be happy moments, just to offset the misery we're going to be seeing play out in front of us. The audience is going to need something to hold on to through the dark parts of the story.
Yeah. One sequence or moment that, like, they haven't done the, Jesus being tempted in the wilderness by Satan, and they haven't, because of that, they haven't had Satan really visibly present at all. Like, there've been kind of little like hints, like the snake armband on Pilate, and they've had some other like snake imagery and things like that. But they haven't had, a Satan figure, even in the Passion of the Christ. Mel Gibson, has Satan kind of showing up in a human form in the Garden of Gethsemane as Jesus is praying and stuff. But we don't get any kind of stuff like that. So that would be one. It'll be interesting, I guess, to see if they do go with like kind of that vision approach, if they finally do give us like a embodied Satan, because that's something that they have so far kind of shied away from, which I'm not saying that they don't believe in Satan, or they are trying to avoid it, or they may be like avoiding it to keep that moment for, this season, not because they are trying to avoid the theological implications of it. But that strikes me as one, if they did go with this approach, one thing that they could do with it is like start to get into some of more of the spiritual realm and things like that, which they haven't had as much of. We got a little bit of that in like the Garden of Gethsemane with Jesus not encountering like, Satan, but encountering, Ezekiel and having this vision of Joseph and stuff like that. And then, we had him also encounter David during this season. So yeah, I could see how what we got in season 5 could kind of be preparing the way for what's coming even more fully in season 6, with kind of some more kind of visions and spiritual encounters and things like that. Are there any other, if they went with that approach, are there any other kind of moments or flashbacks that you think they might go with?
I'm trying to remember what we've skipped over, or what we haven't seen yet.
Yeah, so I think you already mentioned Transfiguration. That's one that definitely, a lot of people have complained about and wish that they had done. Another one that often comes up is John the Baptist baptizing Jesus and the Holy Spirit coming down on him from heaven. So that would potentially be one. And they've tried to keep John in the series, even though he died last season. They had him showing up at the Last Supper in season 5. So I could see potentially bringing him back for that one, because we
haven't seen Jesus as a 12-year-old preaching. We haven't seen that yet. Where he gets away from his parents.
Did in episode 4 or 5 of season 1. We don't actually like see him teaching. I think we see his parents they like realize that he's gone, and then they find him,
Right.
and they like it. It's the cold open for the wedding at Cana episode, because it's kind of establishing his relationship with his mom, and kind of the the difficulty of raising the Messiah, and all of that. But they they could do more with that, or more with Jesus's childhood. I think they'll probably. I doubt that they would do any like baby stuff, because they'll probably be keeping all of that for Christmas specials. I mean, really, the main baby stuff that they have to do like still would be the three kings coming, or the three magi, and potentially like a King Herod slaughter the innocents. But that stuff I imagine they would keep for Christmas specials or other projects and stuff. Other stuff that potentially they could do. They could lean into like Jesus as the some of his like pre-incarnate appearances. So have him flashing back to encounters that he had with other figures in the Old Testament, which we kind of got through House of David. We got one of those moments from their perspective, but they could have Jesus like recalling those moments. Although, yeah, I don't know.
You could also do just different prophetic moments where stuff is prophesied about what's going to happen to Jesus.
That's true.
So we can see it play out. Hundreds of years earlier, this exact moment that we end up seeing on the screen was not predicted, but prophesied, and then it plays out exactly that same way.
Yeah. I do miss a little bit some of the Old Testament parallel scenes that we had in all the seasons except for season 5. So part of me would love to see some more of those, where it's not necessarily like Jesus like recalling a scene, but just like giving us like a parallel or kind of a typological moment, or something that provides kind of context. So that would be another approach to kind of bring those back to at least the cold opens, or
And something they've done already a few times, so I can see them doing here, is some flash forwards to after it's all. So we, you get a little bit of like, hey, it's bad now, but it's, it's going to be okay. Kind of situation. So even though you're in the middle of horrific things you're experiencing with Jesus, that it's going to be all right. The show's. You don't just have to know it from knowing the Bible. The show can tell you, hey, these things are going to be okay. We're not going to tell you all the details yet, but just know that at some point down the line, good things happened, and these characters are going to be okay, and you're going to be all right. You can just kind of stick with us.
Yeah, I definitely could see them doing that. I have some ideas for that, which I'll share when I get into kind of my other alternative approach that I've cooked up. And just to be clear, we're just kind of speculating here. None of us is like, I'm not asking Dallas to give me the inside scoop or anything like that, because I don't want spoilers. I feel like it's not as fun to have stuff spoiled. I would rather be like creating and thinking through kind of on our own, and enjoying the process of imagining kind of how we would do it, even if that doesn't turn out to be what actually happens. But yeah, I definitely think flash forwards, getting into some of the stuff that we've already seen with like the disciples kind of as they're gathering together scripture and making sense of these events, because they did that with Lazarus's his death, resurrection. They had kind of Mary kind of reflecting on the significance of it, and I could see that potentially being what they do with a moment like this, like providing us some big picture like perspective through some of those other characters. And by the way, if you are listening and joining us live, please feel free to leave your own ideas for scenes that they might include, or comments, questions, all that. We would love to be interacting with you live. Angela has said something Dallas mentioned is that they are translating the show in many languages. It's part of their production time. Yeah, so that's another dimension of why this is going to take long, is because they are trying to release it all kind of together in multiple languages. A lot of shows, they'll release them maybe at different paces in different languages, but because kind of the chosen community is such a interconnected global community, I think they've been trying to release it kind of on similar time frames in different countries, and that can be definitely time consuming because you don't necessarily know what to have them like translating and putting together until they've actually completed the cut of the movie. And so yeah, that definitely can be a time consuming dimension of producing a show like this. So
True.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on the Visions approach, or kind of what they could do in that direction?
Well, just kind of another angle of that is kind of what they did with episode 7, where you can have each of the disciples as they're experiencing Jesus on the cross, flashback to the first time they met Jesus, or just something. But we kind of already did that, so I don't know how you could do that to where it wouldn't just feel like the same thing. But
yeah,
I think we're going to probably see a couple of those to where something important that is relevant to whatever is happening on the cross at that moment is directly connected to something that they can think about or remember.
Yeah. I'm not like, just so people know, like I'm not adverse to them doing flashbacks of the life of the disciples and stuff like that during the show, but I just want it to be a little more kind of in the flow of like the events. Like it just felt like there was like too much kind of being dumped all at once and not closely tied enough to like what was happening in episode 7. So if there's like one character who's like kind of going through something and we get some flashback and we see the cross like has a special significance in light of that, like I'm all for that. It just needs to kind of like all flow together as like a part of an episode and like have a kind of cohesive through line.
So like episode 7, one of the issues, kind of like we talked about, is that the story had a momentum that was the show was doing at that point. These episodes just felt like that episode, the flashbacks, felt like it just kind of slowed everything down. It's like we were wanting to get to this other part of the story, and yet we had to go through each one of these people remembering something that was only kind of connected to what was going on, and it was just the wrong spot to place those flashbacks at that particular time. So it's all about where you put them. Are they progressing the story forward, or are they just there because we got to slow stuff down because we can't do anything until episode 8? It has to happen here. So it's one of the tricky things about trying to adapt a story and just try to spread things out over a certain number of episodes to where everything stays interesting. I totally respect what they're doing, and even when they kind of drop the ball a little bit, it's still incredible that they were able to do what they did.
Cool. Well, so with the visions approach, so that could be Jesus having lots of visions, whether that's kind of Old Testament stuff or even future stuff, or it could be from the disciples, giving them kind of some flashbacks and stuff. Basically, that approach is kind of taking the events. You're probably still telling things like the main story sequentially, but you're just having extra stuff kind of interspersed there to expand out the story so that it fits into 8 episodes. Is that kind of a pretty good summary of what that approach would look like from your perspective, Victor?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Just kind of we're going to tell a story that takes place over the course of one day. We got to spread it out over 8 episodes, and each episode needs to have its own beginning, middle, and end. So you have to do something, and that's the perfect way to do it, is to give little mini stories along the way.
So another approach that I've thought of, which I think would be interesting, is kind of patterned on this is a famous movie, Rashomon, which it's known for doing this thing where the same event, the movie goes back through the same event multiple times, but we see it from the perspective of a different character each time. And so we go through the same kind of sequence of things, but because we're in the point of view of a specific character, we notice certain things differently, we're exposed to certain things and not to other things, and so we gain kind of a greater perspective on the event as we see it through these different characters' perspectives. And I won't get into that specific film and how they use this technique, but this has been used in other films as well and other shows. Fairly recently, Apple had a show, The After Party, where they did this kind of pretty like funny like way of doing this, where they had different characters, but each character also had like a different genre of like film or show. And so we went through the event, but it was like a rom-com version and a mystery version. I won't get into like all the details of that show, but they employed it fairly effectively for that. So basically the idea is if they took this kind of Rashomon approach, instead of kind of beginning the show and then kind of just kind of progressing chronologically from episode 1 to episode 8, you would potentially be cycling through the entire sequence of events 8 times across the different episodes. So episode 1, so you might not do the entire time period for each episode, because maybe one story, one character, maybe they're focused more kind of early in the story, and another character, the things that they're involved in are maybe more kind of focused towards the end. But in general, kind of each character, we're going to go back through these events, but we're going to be sticking with that character. And so we'll be noticing different things. They'll experience some things that other characters didn't experience. And so we'll kind of get like a different perspective on the meaning of the event and the significance of the event because we are kind of seeing it through the lens of different characters. Am I kind of explaining the basic premise of that pretty clearly?
Yeah, actually, as you're explaining, I'm thinking this is probably exactly what they need to do, because you can show. I think like I say, you're not going to show the whole sequence, but then you can show sections of it each time. So over the course of probably I don't know, like 4 episodes of the actual crucifixion, I'm guessing. 4 to 5 episodes. So over the course of those, you advance it. The first episode of it is 60% of the whole story. Then the next episode is just a little bit section of that, and then a section of that where some of these things are repeated multiple times, but we advance it. So we're not going all the way to the end. By the time we get to the end, we'll have seen the key points several times from different angles. And I really like that.
And this actually works pretty well with how the Gospels are set up and what we know about different characters. Because Simon Peter, he would be probably one of the early episodes, because he's really involved with the trial, and he's having his moments where he's denying Jesus. But then we're told that most of the male disciples were not actually present at the cross. So if his episode was one of the early ones, his might end before the crucifixion even ends, because he's already had his his big moments where he's denying Jesus. Same potentially with John, if he had a separate episode. And it's a whole nother question of which characters do you choose to kind of have as your POV characters. I would definitely think Peter, potentially John, if those two aren't too similar. Probably John would be different, because he actually does show up at the cross itself. You would probably have one of the women, like Mary Magdalene, and because they are present, and they're in a very different place as well. They haven't found out about what's happened yet, because they are well, I guess Mary is in the city, but some of the other women are with Lazarus. So there's kind of events that need to happen there as well. And then you could have a Judas episode where you get that's going to end a very different way as well, because we're seeing death and everything. Potentially something like a Atticus focused episode might be one. Maybe
Yusuf is going to probably get one.
Yeah, Yusuf and Shmuel, and some of these characters would probably be pairs. So even though a couple of characters might both be significant, they may be like kind of, there might be one episode where, it really it's from the perspective of Yusuf, for example, but that's also kind of like our Shmuel episode, because he's showing up because the two are closely tied together. And so you're getting to kind of see the cross through kind of how it affects the different characters. And part of my pitch for this is that this kind of brings the show back to its roots of really being focused on not just telling the story of Jesus, but like seeing the story of Jesus through the perspective of the people who surrounded him, through the, kind of his effect on their lives. That's really kind of the bread and butter of The Chosen from like when it started in season 1, and something that I feel like brought a lot of people in, is kind of really feeling rooted in the perspective of these characters. And that then makes kind of the significance of Jesus kind of shine more brightly than just kind of like seeing him from a more kind of objective lens, where we're just kind of following him around. Another kind of angle on this that they could potentially use, tying in something, Victor, that you were saying when you were talking about the potential of like doing flash forwards and stuff, is that you could then also have flash forwards that are tied to these perspective POV characters. So not only do we get kind of the events of the cross from their point of view, but we could also kind of jump forward to where they are, a decade or multiple decades later, as a result of what they've seen, kind of see the impact of it on them. And this is also like it would be a way for the show to explore how, in the Gospels, in the New Testament, the cross is almost like a diamond, where there are many facets to what Jesus is doing when he dies on the cross, which are kind of explored in Christian theology. So there's kind of aspects of like him redeeming. He is Christus Victor, triumphing over Satan. He is he's bearing the wrath of God for our sins. There are different ways that Christian theologians have explained the significance of Jesus dying. And so you could potentially, especially through if you have kind of flash forwards to characters looking back on the cross, that would be a way for the show to kind of bring in some of these more theological perspectives and ideas, which won't be as easy to bring out from within the events themselves. But if you have Peter, recounting the events of his failures at the cross to Mark or to some other character in the future.
I think they could all be preaching to crowds.
Yeah.
I think they could all be doing that to show that, hey, this is what, especially Peter, we saw him struggling. So you could just jump forward and see him. Oh yeah, he kind of figured it out.
Yeah, actually, as I'm talking about this, like you could even potentially with Peter, his, at least kind of the tradition is that Peter was potentially crucified upside down, because he didn't deny Jesus again later on, which would be actually a meaningful like counterpoint if his storyline is focused on his failure to identify with Jesus, denying him when push came to shove. If we then get like a flash forward to him choosing to not deny Jesus and dying for it, even though that would be a gruesome scene, it would be like kind of a moment of triumph for Peter's character, and a way for the show to kind of not just end us on a down note of Peter totally failing when he should have come through. And you could have other ways of kind of showing the significance and meaning of what's going on there on the cross. Yeah, so I don't know. What do you think about that idea?
Yeah, like one question I have is like, okay, so we know that most of the disciples weren't actually there at the cross, but does the Bible say that they weren't, like, or does it discount the fact that they could have been in the crowd somewhere in the background watching all of this? Or are they somewhere else specifically? I'm trying to remember if they were like definitely not witnessing it in any way. because I think the show could still do that. Just kind of show them not able to get close enough, but still able to see it and experience it, unless it is contradicted by them saying no, they were somewhere else. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember if it specifically says anything.
I would want to double check it. I'm seeming to remember that at the very most they are a long ways off, but I think it may even just be like those that are actually present are a long ways off, but none of the and it may also be like a thing of silence, like they aren't mentioned being there. So I don't know, like for sure, like if they, especially like, you can have like a diversity when you've got 12 disciples, and that's something that they often need to do is like, divide up like how the different disciples are reacting and responding and stuff. So, if they have like Matthew present there at the cross, like I don't think most people are going to cry foul at that. But actually, like there are some disciples where I would kind of like prefer that they not be there. Like for Peter, for example, I think it might be more like powerful for him to, just be kind of overcome with failure and grief. Maybe like he can kind of like see the cross like through a window from, in the distance or whatever, from wherever he's at in Jerusalem or whatever. But yeah, if anyone on the fly wants to check that out for us, I'm open to correction if I. So I know for sure John is there.
Right.
He's there at the cross, and then the women are there at the cross. But I think that at least one of the Gospels mentions that they the others were not present. But someone can double check me there. But I mean, there's still plenty of other characters that we do know are present. So, you could have like potentially like an episode focused on Jesus's mother. That would be, very difficult episode, but also like very moving. Whoever the centurion is at the cross, whether it is Quintus or Atticus or some other character, that would obviously be a very apt character to have as a POV character. We're told about various comings and goings between the chief priests and Pilate, so there's definitely going to have to be some sort of episode where we're seeing kind of some of the inner workings of what's going on kind of among the elites. That could potentially be told by like Joanna or another, maybe Claudia, or some other character that is sympathetic. Yeah. I guess so. If we were going to do this, do you want to like come up with a list of characters that you think would be likely characters to do points of view for?
Yeah, it might be easier at first to figure out who wouldn't need one.
Okay.
There's like a lot of disciples like Nathaniel. I think we got all of his story. There's a lot of people that we've got all the story we're going to get. They can just be there.
Yep. I think I feel like
sorry Nathaniel, but
yeah, you don't want too many disciples because it's going to be like hard for it to feel distinct. So definitely Peter, potentially John, and then the only other disciples that I think are like possibilities would be Thomas or Matthew, and then Judas. Definitely Peter, Peter, maybe John, definitely Judas.
Matthew, just because he's a fan favorite character.
Yeah, although
I think he's
they've kind of shied away from him. Like, part of me wonders whether maybe the actor doesn't have as much time or whatever. But it's felt like they haven't given him as much to do, even though early on he got a lot, and there's a lot of fans who really love the character. But it definitely, like, if they are kind of, I think it would make sense for them to do Matthew if they were able to do it. Thomas, it's a little difficult. Like he definitely has one of the most like significant storylines out of the disciples at this point. Um, if they do the resurrection, so this is another potential theory of what they could do. In the Gospel of Matthew, it says that after like at kind of the end of the crucifixion, after Jesus dies, there's an earthquake and a bunch of dead people who were believers or kind of the saints of the Old Testament. They rise from the dead at that moment. They come alive. They appear in Jerusalem to different people, and then we're not told exactly. Some people think that maybe they ascended into heaven like Jesus. And so one of my theories is that could be what they do with Ramah. They could have her come back, get reunited with Thomas at some point, probably after Thomas's famous scene with Jesus, and then ascend back into heaven or whatever. But like that strikes me as a storyline that is season 7 storyline. Like maybe they'll kind of like hint at that, like with a end of the season like stinger or whatever, or like a like a they haven't done like a after credit scene, but that strikes me as something they could like throw in as a after credit scene, like showing like Ramah appearing out of her tomb or whatever, to set up the next season. And other than that, like Thomas doesn't have a ton to do, except unless they want to have him interacting with Coffney and the two of them like reconciling. But if anything, like Coffney might be the more of the POV character in that case, or maybe they have Thomas like trying to reach him, or because Coffney, I definitely think the reason that they have him is to kind of be the leader of like the rabble that's calling for them to crucify Jesus, so that like I think part of this is them trying to avoid how Passion of the Christ, a lot of people were concerned that it was anti-Semitic because it just seemed like everybody was kind of irrationally wanting the crucifixion of Jesus, and the people in the crowd, they didn't seem to be thinking, and they just kind of seemed to be irrational or whatever. But if you have like Coffney, he's a more kind of fully formed character, so we can understand where he's coming from when he starts calling, like if he starts calling crucify him, and the people who are with him start calling crucify him. We understand that this is not saying that all Jewish people are like bloodthirsty or hate Jesus or something. This is just like some specific people had issues. So I think that's part of like what they're doing with Coffney's character. So yeah, I don't know. I definitely
just from a storytelling perspective, all the disciples have kind of run their storytelling. If you're doing a TV show, their course, they've all gone through their arcs of who they were and who they're going to be. They're kind of all who they're going to be, and they're not going to change much over the next day. So from a narrative point of view, there's not a lot for them to do. That's why I love your Coffney idea, because he has somewhere to go. He's starting somewhere, and he has somewhere to go. Could end up in a good spot, could end up in a bad spot. That's an interesting journey that he still has yet to take. And there's a few characters, Atticus, there's Quintus, there's some other people that we don't know their fates. Shmuel, what's he going to do? Even Judas, we know what happens to his, but we don't know how it's going to happen. Those are the interesting stories we still have yet to follow. That if you're making a TV show, that would be interesting narratively. So I think it needs to be stuff like that. It's got to be stuff we don't know the outcome for, or else it's going to be just kind of watching it play out.
That's a really good point. One of the values, if you do have like this approach of like different characters, is that it allows allows there to be suspense in a an episode about the most known event probably in the history of mankind, the crucifixion. So we all know the story. How do you create suspense and like curiosity? What's going to happen next? You tell that story. You tell individual people's stories in the context of that story. And you have people where we're not quite sure kind of what's going to come of them. Atticus, is he going to be the person who says this is the Son of God, or is he going to be more kind of helping the Roman cause and trying to create chaos? Coffney, like, is he going to just continue to double down on hatred of Jesus, or is he going to have some sort of epiphany moment? So yeah, it's funny. Like, a lot of the villains actually make for more interesting point of view characters for the purposes of this kind of a story. Oh yeah. So thanks, Angela, for checking the Gospels. So she mentions that so that the Gospels mention the chief priests, the scribes, the female followers of Jesus, and the apostle John. So those are at least the characters who are kind of explicitly mentioned being there. You can see if if it actually explicitly says that the others were not there, or if it just kind of omits them.
Right.
Because if it omits, then that leaves the chosen with like a little bit of more running room to, even if it doesn't say that Matthew is there, he could still potentially be there or whatever. Even though, the omission of them does, is kind of glaring or whatever from a reading perspective. But yeah, I think that's a really good point. That a lot of the characters who, like, we want to focus on characters who still have like an arc to continue, as opposed to characters who are more like kind of complete and don't have much to do. So obviously, yeah, Simon Peter, he's got an arc because he's going to have to deal with the fact that he failed Jesus, and there's a lot of interesting kind of emotional stuff with that. John, if he does have an arc, I think most likely John and Mother Mary's stories would be tied together. So I think those two are kind of a package, because his moment at the cross is the famous like, woman, here's your son, son, this is your mother, saying at the cross. And so potentially, they construct some sort of story with John where he's having to learn that or accept that.
Or maybe he's protecting her whenever they're all scattering from whatever happens next. They all got to go somewhere. Maybe they're all scattered and he's assigned to go get her or something like that.
Yeah. They also had Jesus. There were a couple of times where Jesus was telling John, like, stay close to me. So that's something they might play on. Yeah. And then with Judas, there's definitely like a story there of like kind of him processing through what he's done and feeling guilt, trying to take it back, not being able to take it back. That'll definitely be one of the easier in terms of like, there's like kind of a clearer story there just from what the Gospels provide.
When chronologically does he kill himself?
It's a little vague. I think they've got some room. Like he tries to return the money while they're still kind of judging Jesus, and they won't receive it. But I think it's a little vague as far like it happens at a certain point in the story sequence of the Gospels, but I don't know if that's like, if we necessarily have to, if the show needs to,
I'm just wondering if, like, could he be at the crucifixion or be witnessing it and realizing everything that he did not work, at some point. That would be the ultimate realization for him that he was wrong. 'Cause even up until
especially
then,
given the
he
story
could
that they
think Jesus is on the cross. He's going to be able to at any moment. He's going to, he's
yeah,
going
yeah.
to, the legion of angels are going to come down any moment, and it doesn't
Mhm.
happen. That would be crushing for him.
Oh yeah. So Angela's remembering in season 2 the flash forward where they had John writing chapter 1 of the Gospel of John, and they had him talking to Mary about Genesis 1, and yeah. So they have kind of established already that like he ends up kind of taking her in and having a special relationship with her. Um, but they haven't done like too much with that in the context of the main storyline. So
Right.
so they definitely have room to explore that. Um, yeah, I could see potentially like one route they might go is having like one episode that's kind of like the rest of the disciples. Basically, if you have like Peter, then like maybe you have one episode where it's like everybody else, and we kind of get to maybe we have like one character that we're following, but we get exposed to what do the rest of them do, because we don't necessarily need to. If they're all together, then one character can kind of tell that whole story for the group.
Right.
uh, yeah. And potentially that could be Peter, but yes, that's. But then, yeah, you'll need some sort of character, kind of close to Pilate to be present for some of the things that are going on there. So that Atticus would present himself as an obvious choice there, just because they've used him a lot to give us insight into things that are happening behind the scenes. Joanna would be another possibility, although she's kind of now a little bit removed. Claudia would also be like another potential character that they could do, although she hasn't had like as much of like a character. Like she's had little bits of character arc, but Atticus would seem like the most obvious choice.
We got Nicodemus is back too. I don't know how much they're going to
Yeah,
want to bring him in for. I mean, he's there.
yeah,
I mean, he's going to be there. We're just going to be a day later, so it's not like
yeah,
he had time to go anywhere. So
yeah. No, definitely. Like if it'll either be like Yusuf or Nicodemus, like those two will I think be like a pair that's working together. That'll be like an episode is like following the two of them as they're like trying to stop the Sanhedrin from doing the sham trial, and then eventually we'll see them burying Jesus. Because spoiler, Yusuf is most likely Joseph of Arimathea,
I think
and
Dallas confirmed it. So
oh, okay, yeah. Maybe they'll do the Holy Grail. Have Yusuf get have his isn't the Holy Grail is it the cup that like takes the blood of Jesus, or I don't know if it's the cup that he has at the Last Supper. Maybe it's
yeah, I
both of
think
those.
that's what that is. We saw the Holy Grail in
Yeah, yeah.
last.
Because in like Grail lore and stuff, I think it's Joseph of Arimathea who gets the Grail and brings it to England and all that stuff. So I I would be surprised if they did like Holy Grail call outs in The Chosen, but I would love that as someone who loves King Arthur stuff. Um, but yeah, Nicodemus and Yusuf will be together. Potentially Mary Magdalene might be in that storyline too, or they might give her own story.
She needs one. She's been kind of given short shrift the last couple
Yeah,
seasons, so she needs a
yeah,
good spotlight episode all to herself.
yeah. I agree. I think she would make sense as a candidate who, um, she, um, yeah, she's in the city, so they've brought her back for a reason. So I can't see them like not using her as a really central character. Um, and then, yeah, potentially, if they bring back Quintus, then I think you do like a Quintus centered episode to like catch us up to speed on like where's he been, give us kind of a flashback of the events
Mm-hmm.
since he saw the story in season 4 bring us up to this moment. He's participating in the scourging of Jesus and stuff like that. And yeah, we'll see if he is the one who has the epiphany and says, surely this is the Son of God, or if he's with those that are mocking him. But if they give him an entire episode, that's potentially enough space for them to arc him from, being in a very desperate place, being angry when he sees Jesus, lashing out and participating in the torture, but then like having regret, realizing. So like they could actually do something really interesting with Quintus. I would be really interested in that kind of an arc. And then,
we like Quintus. We want him. We want the best for him. So I think they're going to give us that.
Yeah, and then Shmuel Shmuel could potentially be, instead of actually being with Yusuf, he might be more kind of our point of view character following around like Caiaphas, or it could either be Shmuel or Caiaphas or the two of them together, kind of giving us like some of the kind of opposing Pharisees and some of the machinations happening there. Because we're gonna with Caiaphas, they've been building up kind of his whole rivalry with the brother-in-law and stuff, so they'll have to pay that off, even though I wasn't like super enthusiastic about that whole storyline. So yeah, we probably picked out at least 8 characters there that could fill the season. But so that's my my theory for what they should do. I again have no insider knowledge, and so at this point they've chosen some sort of approach, so we will find out what it is. But this is my, if I was Dallas isn't going to do this. I'm not saying that I'm this smart person that Dallas needs to listen to, but if Dallas pulled me in for Chosen season 6 and was like, hey, any insights or ideas, that's what I would pitch him, is doing that type of a revolving around the crucifixion, kind of giving us 8 individual episodes, which is kind of each its own self-contained story that kind of eventually progresses us past those events while kind of overlapping at different points, so that we're seeing the events from different perspectives, getting different senses of kind of the long-term significance of what happened on that day. That would be my pitch for it.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I would bet money that we're going to have some kind of version of what you just pitched, as far as a presentation of the Rashomon staggered chronological Rashomon storytelling. Yeah, to me that feels like, because like this is going to be, I would say, the most challenging season of TV that any TV show's ever had to do. With the subject matter they're trying to tackle in a way that has never been attempted before. Yeah. We've never seen the crucifixion done more than a 2-hour movie, for the entirety of it, or at least in those movies, it's only like 30 minutes of it, or an hour. This is going to be a full 8 episodes where you're going to have to really experience what it's like for all those people around him to go through this. You're not just witnessing this happening, yet you're going to be with these characters that you've become friends with over the course of these seasons, and you're going to experience it. We've never had that before. We've never had something that's going to have to tie this closely to an existing narrative, yet still try to be entertaining and do the things a TV show is expected to do. I'm really fascinated to see how they pull this one off.
Yeah. And, if they do a good job at it, now that they have like Amazon, kind of as their sponsor, I think there's possibility that potentially, The Chosen could try to get into some sort of award, like mainstream awards, Emmys, that kind of thing. Whether it's for like Jonathan Rumi or for some aspect of the show itself. They may not win.
Well, the cinematography deserves it. Cinematography definitely deserves.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, because the cinematography has really been beautiful throughout the the past couple seasons. So yeah, I wish that for them, because I feel like the show has gotten like so much publicity and interest, even kind of outside of Christian circles, that I feel like there might be enough momentum for an award show to want to kind of at least give some sort of acknowledgement to what the show has accomplished, and kind of the significance of it. Even though, a lot of people think of Hollywood as like this, anti-Christian place, I think there is probably some respect for how the show has navigated things in a way that's, respectful to people who are Jewish, and respectful, to audiences from a variety of different backgrounds and stuff. So I think that it could potentially land in some awards if it keeps up with the caliber of things that they've been doing so far. So,
absolutely.
But yeah, I think we will. Yeah, maybe we'll just stick there for tonight, and we can get into discussing kind of specific events and stuff at a future broadcast and stuff. But if you've been listening, and if you like one of the approaches that we pointed out, whether it's kind of the approach of kind of expanding things out through visions or flash forwards or flashbacks and things like that, or this other approach that I've been pitching of kind of going back through the same events 8 times, but from different perspectives and kind of at different points in the story. Let us know which one you think would be most interesting, or if you have another approach that you think would be interesting way for them to do these events and tell it. Definitely let us know in the comments. I love to interact with people, whether it's stuff that where you love what we said, or people who hated something that we said. I still love to hear back from people. So subscribe, like, all of that. And if you're also looking for reviews of episodes 1 to 8 for The Chosen Season 5, check out thebibleartist.com. I'm also working on my Bible study guides, and I'm planning on having all 8 episodes done by the time the show hits on Amazon. And I also have kind of improved kind of PDF guides that I provide to people who are my either monthly or annual supporters on my Buy Me a Coffee, which is kind of like Patreon. It's a way for people to support what I'm doing. So any support that you can provide is very, I'm very grateful for.
That's how I discovered Kevin, is through the Bible study guides. I went looking for them, and they were incredible, and I bought them, and we started dialogue after that. But they're great. They're great Bible studies. You need to download them if you have any interest in diving deeper into these episodes.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Victor. And also, while we're talking about stuff that we've been working on, Victor has an awesome novel, which I have linked in the show notes. So definitely check that out. He releases an episode or like a section of that novel each week, and it's really fun. You can share your quick pitch on it.
My quick pitch is it's Game of Thrones meets Narnia, meets the Acts of the Apostles. Imagine a world where somebody comes to our world, learns about Jesus, and then goes back to their world and has to be the ones to spread the gospel to an entire world that has never even heard of Earth, much less Jesus.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody who's joined us tonight. And I'm not sure when we'll be back because stuff is a little bit up in the air at this point, but definitely be keeping a lookout. We'll be continuing to do streams where, maybe we might pick up. So we did like for season 5, we looked through kind of all the biblical passages that the season would be covering, and we kind of explored those passages and then kind of imagined what the show could do with them. So eventually we'll probably do something similar for season 6. There's also other shows that are going to be coming out soon, the Testament. So I'll kind of like have to wait to see whether like if that looks like it's a show that I'm really excited about, then maybe I'll get on here to talk about that. And maybe, I may want to revisit season 5 as we get closer to the Amazon streaming date, and maybe we can talk about kind of big picture stuff, or talk about like themes or ideas from season 5 that we didn't get to. But there's lots of stuff to talk about, and even more stuff down the road. So thanks everybody who's been listening, and Godspeed.